Sounds good. All right, we're on Facebook here, and so a lot of people will be watching this. So as I speak, you guys can throw your hand up if you don't understand something, or if you have a question, or whatever. I'm certainly open to questions, and that's what most of my talk will be about. Go ahead.
This is English version. We'll understand.
This is the English version. Yeah, I get going a little bit fast sometimes, but okay. So to start out, I'm just going to ask anybody, what their primary target species is. How many raccoon guys do we have here? And that's your primary. Okay, about 20%. Okay, how many muskrat guys here? Just about 60%, maybe a little bit more even. How about coyotes? Okay, about 40%. And any other species?
Beaver.
Beaver. We got about 10% here, maybe 20%.
Fox.
Fox. All right, we got a fox guy. Okay. Okay. So I'll primarily, speak about the main three: muskrat, raccoon, and coyotes today. So I haven't spoke here for 2 years, and a lot has happened in the fur industry. And last year when I was out on the road buying fur, guys would come up to me and say, gosh, why hasn't the fur market increased more than this? And I would say to them, you have to realize, if this was in say February or whatever, that if you had gone back to after the previous season, in say May, June, July, literally wild fur was almost worthless. There was a period beginning of last summer where you could not sell fur. I couldn't sell it in China. I couldn't sell it in Europe. I couldn't sell it in Russia. You couldn't even import it into China. And the import restrictions in China remain in that you can't sell raw skins there, but you can import dress skins. So now everything has to go through another step. We import it into Cambodia, and then it's imported into China before we sell it. And everything we're selling today besides muskrats is dressed. And it's just the only way we can do a business. Otherwise, it would be impossible to buy fur if you didn't offer it to the customer in a dressed state. So I'm going to get started. Does anybody want to give a prediction of what they think the fur market's going to do before I get started, or even what I'm going to say right now about any of these species?
It's going to be up.
What's that?
It's going to be up.
It's going to be up. All right. What's going to be up?
Muskrat.
Muskrats. Okay. That's good. Anybody else?
Beaver.
Beaver. What do you think?
It'll be about $2 more.
It'll be about $2 more. All right. All right. We got a couple brave souls ready to make a prediction. Okay. Okay. So here is the problem with our industry, and the problem with our industry is we're down to one market, and that market is what? China. And even 5 years ago, even 4 years ago, 6 years ago, we still sold a lot of stuff to Russia. We still sold a lot of stuff to even into Europe, but we are really down to one market. And we see with Canada Goose, they were kind of a one market for coyotes, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that later, but it has a huge detrimental effect when one market pulls out and they're your only market. So we'll talk about muskrats first. Who gave us the muskrat prediction right there? The muskrat market is probably the high point of the fur business. It was the high point of the fur trade last year. And while I bought last year, starting in November until, let's just say, almost May, we continue to buy, the muskrat price actually more than doubled from what we started out the season as. And the primary reason for that is we had COVID the last summer. At the beginning, everything shut down, and it was horrible. And then we had all the mink killed off in Scandinavia. And as bad as that was, that they had to kill off all those mink, it was very helpful to the fur trade because a majority of the western mink, shall you say, were produced in Denmark. So that was a huge boost for the price of mink, and hence the price of muskrats. And it did a lot of that. They didn't kill a lot of those mink even until October, so we didn't even realize quite the impact it was going to have until October and then November. And then the customers in China, they kind of realized, hey, we're still going to have a fur season here. In other words, we're still going to sell some coats, and there wasn't going to be as many mink available. So the price from, let's just say, a ranch mink last at the absolute bottom in maybe July at the Copenhagen sale was worth $10. That mink until June went to probably 30. So the price of mink from the absolute bottom just about tripled. Okay, so the muskrat actually, from its low point, did just about the same thing. And it really, truly mimics what a ranch mink does. And the benefit that a muskrat has in this market is China is a COVID-0 society. Does anybody know what COVID-0 society means? They don't have any COVID. And what they do is, if they have a case or two, they shut down that area, okay? And if you're a fur retailer, that's a problem. Because what happens if December 15th, they shut down where your retail store is? So there's a lot of risk in being a retail furrier, but the good thing about, say, ranch mink or muskrats is the styles, they don't change that much from year to year. So if a retailer or a manufacturer or even a dealer that's selling the skins, they don't have so much risk in the fact that maybe they don't have a selling season because of COVID would crop up in their area and they wouldn't be able to sell. Because the next year the styles will be fairly similar. A ranch mink coat, yes, it does change. A muskrat coat, it's typically a liner for a kind of a dress coat, and the styles don't change that much, and so they would have a chance to sell it the following season. So that's why muskrat and mink have kind of improved, and the mink price, the ranch mink price, has fallen from its peak in June. As you know, it went up for about a year straight, and muskrat did the same thing. It has fallen somewhat, but there is not a lot of ranch mink in China right now, and there's not a lot of muskrats either. And if the season starts to progress and we don't see a lot of COVID outbreaks in China, I honestly think that the muskrat could actually improve. And I'm not saying, you know, I mean, we actually paid some fairly high prices last year. I think eight the biggest ones was the highest we paid. I'm not saying it's going to advance from there, but that's a pretty strong muskrat price considering the state of the fur business. So the muskrat is certainly the brightest item that we have. Any questions on that? Anything about the concept? No. So there's very few muskrats laying around. Go ahead.
Why isn't Russia involved anymore?
There's a couple of reasons that Russia isn't involved, and unfortunately the biggest one is style. A guy that used to wear one of the big hats wears a stocking cap. That's a style, and that's you know, super unfortunate for us. But that is a big thing. Second thing is you know, people used to say, oh, if the oil price goes up, you know, Russia will have money. The problem is the society is a super closed society today, unlike it was even 5-10 years ago. I mean, Putin gets all the money there, and the rank and file people that buy coats, besides the super, super rich, which the real good cat market, you know, which is you know, $100,000 coats, you know, that's still pretty good. Because the super rich people in Russia still have money, but the rank and file people, they just don't. It's really unfortunate, but you know, capitalism was good for a while there, but it's just.
Will it ever change?
It's a political situation, you know. I mean, the style could certainly change, but you know, the political position or situation, you know, I have no idea. But it's a really unfortunate situation. So that's the two reasons. I mean, you know, we do sell a lot of stuff that goes to China that goes on to Russia. So there is still some stuff that goes to Russia, but COVID really hurt that trade. The border is not as free as it used to be, going back and forth. I mean, people used to come in just like as a tourist and come to the fur producing areas in China. They you know, buy 20 coats, take it back to their hometown, wherever it may be, in Siberia, wherever, and realize that Siberia is a huge area of Russia. You know, it goes almost all the way down to the southern part. And, you know, they go back, sell 20 coats, you know, make some money, come back, buy. And that trade has just been shut down because the free traffic because of China's COVID-0 policy. I mean, I haven't been to China in 2 years. I have not been to China in 3 months, you know, in my entire adult life. And, you know, I haven't been there in 2 years. You know, I have to quarantine for 21 days, and I'm just not willing to do that. And I have a team there, so they don't do it. So, yeah, the Russian situation is, you know, it's an unfortunate situation. You know, in fur trade, I guess I'll just say this right now before I move on to another one. I had a guy come into my booth, and he said, is China the problem? He said that we have such cheap fur. And I said, is China the problem? I said, they're the only ones buying. And, you know, I guess that's, you know, obviously it's a bad thing that they're the only ones buying, but, you know, as a trade, you know, I guess we do have an entire world that we could sell to, but essentially we've given up on the entire world. That's what the fur trade has done.
Didn't we used to have Italy as a...
Yeah, sure. I mean, we had Italy, we had Germany,
And they
you know.
don't buy anymore.
they are, yeah, it's, they buy cats, for the very, very high-end
They used to
market.
buy mink.
They used to buy mink, they used to buy raccoon, they used to buy everything. Germany, country of 70 million people, used to take the entire wild fur production of this country when it was a real production, But yeah, we've given up on these. A woman, and I'm going to talk about sustainability a little bit later, so I don't want to get into this too much now. But a woman in America, or a man, I'm sorry, that's a kind of sexist comment, but a woman or a man in this country will go into a store, a young person that's unassociated with our trade, obviously, will go into a store and they'll buy a polyester garment that produces microplastics that is never going to fade away in a garbage dump, and that is a petrochemical that's pumped out of the ground that's super unenvironmentally friendly, and yet they won't touch a fur coat that is been sustainable for 500 years and is biodegradable and lasts for more than one season. It's like the most environmentally friendly thing there is. I mean, as a trade, I'm going to talk about this later. I shouldn't get started. But as a trade, we need to, and as a people, we need to shame the world into buying what they're buying now and buy our product. That's the truth. Our product is the most environmentally friendly product there is. It's sustainable. I mean, we've proven it over thousands of years. This trade's been around, in some form or another.
But they don't look at it.
They don't see it that way because
it's cruelty to animals.
Yeah, but understand that that's one thing that we can't do, and that's you're confusing with environmentalism with animal rights. Okay, and they're totally two different things. And people today in the environmental movement put all forms of life below the environment. Okay, so if you have to sacrifice a person, that's how they feel for the environmental movement. It's okay to save the environment. So the environment has trumped everything. So if we just show that we have an environmental product, that's super sustainable, and we really should be able to sell it. We just don't promote our message very well in the world. That's our biggest problem. Anyway, enough on that. We'll maybe come back to that a little bit later. The next item is Raccoon. How many coon trappers do we have here? About, I don't know, 60% of you? Yeah. I mean, everybody would have raised their hand, 6-7 years ago. It was the #1 item in Wisconsin. I mean, muskrats had taken second fiddle, and so had everything else. It's difficult to give this talk on Raccoon right now. I have dress skins in China, every day that I sell some. I got my report this morning. I sold 100 and some skins. Yesterday I sold 500. The day before I sold 1,100. We sell a different amount every day. But the problem with Raccoon is they go into what's called a parka. Everybody knows what a parka is. They line them with Raccoon. They trim them with Raccoon, and the styles change every year. And no retailer, no wholesaler wants to be caught with parkas from this season and the styles this season for next year. Now, the good thing is we actually have a lot of time left. Their Chinese New Year is over a month later than our Christmas, so they buy garments all the way until February basically. So my skins are in China waiting for a guy to say, hey, I just got an order on 6,000 coats, and he comes into my store and buys 12,000 coon, or maybe 3,000 if he's trimming, or whatever. So we do still have some time. And the prices that I'm selling at right now certainly are reflective of last year's prices that I paid. The only thing that I will say is even if those prices advance from last year, the poorer coon are definitely going to be an issue. Okay, blue pelts, which were very easily dressed in China, are not so easily dressed in Cambodia, and they don't do as good a job. A blue pelt, the follicle hasn't come through the leather, and so you end up with shaving off some of the follicles, and some of the guard hair goes. They look like a mole when they come out, and you pay for dressing, you pay for import tax, you pay for the skin, and you get zero back out of it. So if you're a blue pelt trapper, if you're an early season trapper in Raccoon, the coon market could improve from here. Certainly, that type of Raccoon is not. You're going to have to trap a seasonable coon. So if you're a water trapper, you're really going to have to wait. And if you're a land trapper, you're going to have to wait until basically water season opens in Wisconsin. And same thing at the end of the season. As coons start to deteriorate, it's not going to be worth it. So if you are a coon, if you primarily target coon, you better be targeting, the proper coon. And don't just say, triples and up or 2X and up. You can harvest any size as long as it's a nice white leather Raccoon. Any questions on that? So, I mean, we're not, go ahead.
So what is the ideal, over the average, ideal time to trap cougars?
Okay, that, he wants to know when is the best time to trap a raccoon in Wisconsin. And my answer to that is when they're good.
Yeah.
Okay? That is a very difficult question to answer. And,
Over the average?
yeah, but there's no average, because the closer you get to Milwaukee, it's difficult because that's a darker coon that deteriorates much faster. Okay, you know, you get to like say Indiana, you know, that coon is clear and white for 3 days. I mean, it's just a super steep peak and trough. And you get to western Wisconsin, towards the river and even north, and you have a much bigger window. I mean, there's guys catching raccoon up there in Christmas that I've seen are just gorgeous. And it depends on the season as well. If you have a really super cold November, the coon are going to deteriorate faster. They're going to den up, and or a fluffy snow. I know that's coon don't like to travel in fluffy snow, so a coon will stay in the den and they'll deteriorate faster. So, learn to identify how a coon deteriorates. I mean, it's really easy to see, and they always basically come into prime at the same time. A bigger coon comes in first, and in your area, obviously we have a long state here, so it's a little different everywhere, so I won't say a date. But when that coon is white, that's when you want to start to harvest it. You want to harvest as many as possible until you start to see problems. And if you're just skinning your coon, turn them inside out, check for redness on the neck, and obviously look for, a browning or a yellowing, on the fur. That's going to show that you're going to have, some problems. Okay? Anything else on the raccoon there? Any other questions, comments, complaints? Go ahead.
Pretty much a November issue, right?
It is pretty much a November issue. For he lives in the heart of the state. Yeah, it's pretty much a November issue. I mean, we used to say, during deer season, was the best coon for lots of, Wisconsin. A lot of guys wouldn't be able to trap him, which was kind of unfortunate. But yeah, so a lot of the best coon remain unharvested in this state. But yeah, if you can trap during deer season, that's a great time to trap. But yeah, that's what you're going to have to harvest for coon. And there is, if COVID stays under control in China, think about, this country a little bit, what happened when we first had, mandates released and, people became active in certain things and they bought certain things, they fixed up their house, whatever. You could see some, pent up demand and buying, in China as a result. So if we have a real COVID free, winter, I think it could be a very good year. And you can see, advancing coon prices. But like I said, it's still going to be difficult on those off grades because of the dressing issue that we're not dressing in China anymore. All right. Any more questions, Mr. Question? He doesn't know what I'm talking about. All right. We're going to move on to coyotes. Go ahead.
Yeah, what do you think right now is an average year?
I would say it would be real similar to last year. We don't like to talk about averages. I think we were, in the grease, we were a $10 top last year. That's in the grease, not stretch and flesh. Yeah. And we were a $15 top, so, you can kind of go from there. That's what 5X, leads to. So, I don't know. I mean, if you were a guy that really harvested your coon perfectly, you certainly could average, last year dry, $7 or $8, I don't think that was a problem. And I think green, you could have, if you really did well, you could have gotten, $4 or $5, something like that. But, guys, when they don't target raccoon, they end up, not always bringing in, the best coon. So, maybe their averages didn't reflect that. Questions on raccoon? All right, yeah, that was, raccoon was what everybody came to this convention just a few years ago. And the next item I'm going to talk about is coyotes. And I had guys come into my booth, and every other guy comes in now and asks about coyotes. And I told them, I said, you got to realize, 10 years ago, no one came into my booth and even, talked about coyotes. As a matter of fact, sometimes when a person would bring a coyote to the truck, they go like this. Because, it was the odd man out. This was a muskrat, and this was a raccoon state. And, a coyote is not a beautiful item from this area. And so coyotes, I would say, muskrats on the star. Raccoon could definitely have some possibilities this year. And, coyotes are going to be difficult. And the reason for that is, you know, Canada Goose has pulled out of using fur, and that's been a huge blow to our industry. And the reason that, you know, they were using the eastern type coyotes or the darker, coarser coyotes is because they literally ran out of westerns every year. They just didn't have enough of the good coyotes, and that's the only reason they were using them. So it's a little bit like sometimes a flatter raccoon. If they, you know, run out of good ones, they'll use a flatter one. Well, every year for, you know, 10 years, they ran out of good coyotes. They, you know, they just kept bidding on the price of the commercial type coyotes, so they had enough of the garments. Well, you know, Canada Goose was, well, they were not the only player in coyotes last year, but they certainly were the only player in commercial coyotes. So that is an item. I mean, I'm not going to venture to guess what the price is going to be, but, you know, certainly, you know, anything in the off grades is going to be basically not worth anything. And, you know, north of here, we do have a little different coyote. You do get a few westerns north of here, and some really nice coyotes. So I hate to just blanket Wisconsin and say, you know, it's just going to be terrible. But, you know, you get into, you know, southern part of the state, you get those bad necks, and, you know, whatever. It's going to be tough to average something on your coyotes next year, because I literally, you know, don't know where I could sell this year a darker, you know, coarser coyote, you know. And I was in the booth up here for the last 2 days, and there's a booth next to me that sells hats and stuff. They have all kinds of wild fur items on them. And, you know, there is actually a hat that's made out of coyote. Of course, you know, it's not made out of a Wisconsin coyote. And there's a reason for that, because it's a very coarse item that is very dark. It's not beautiful. And the trimmers in China, they do not like to use it. You know, they're not going to just use it because, you know, somebody says, hey, it's cheap. It's not a super attractive article. So.
On your stop in Wisconsin Rapids, there was a vehicle in front of me. I didn't see what happened, but they had, I want to say, at least a dozen carcass coyotes. I don't think anyone even got out of the truck. Do you have any idea what was wrong with that?
I'll take it. Typically, the problem with a Wisconsin coyote is the neck. Is anybody aware of what I'm talking about? Okay. I mean, if the neck on a coyote, in a carcass coyote, and this is last year when there was a very good coyote market. If that neck is bare, that coyote last year was worthless. And I can see that a mile away. And it's not worth skinning. Because you got to realize this. Here's the deal. Let's say I'm paying $20 on a coyote, and let's say I give that guy in the carcass, and that's for a perfect coyote, $20. Let's say I give this guy with the bad neck coyote $1. The whole front half is gone, but the whole rump is okay. So you think to yourself, wow, he's getting that for 5%, okay? The problem with that is this. That's 1/20 the cost. But when I process that coyote, let's say I get 10 bucks in it, then that coyote is dressed for 12, that's 22. That coyote has to be shipped from my place in Cambodia to China, and then a dealer in China has to put a profit on that. So we're talking about another 10 bucks. So that's $32. So that $1 coyote becomes $33, and that $20 coyote becomes $52. So now that coyote that's half of a coyote becomes 60% of the cost of a good one. Does everybody understand that? So you've got half of a coyote, and it costs 60% as much as the good one. Now, that's only half the story. The other half of the story is, when everybody makes strips in China or wherever, they like to just cut straight down the animal. That's really easy, you know what I mean? You just make strips, anybody, I mean, I could probably do it. You know, you just cut 2.5-inch strips, boom, you're done. You know, sew a little piece of material around it. The problem with when the front half is bad is you have to cut that into strips, and then you have to match it back to the other piece, because it's only half as long as what a strip should be. Okay, what's the problem with that? Does anybody know what the problem might be with that? Anybody know Mr. T?
Labor?
What?
More labor?
Well, yes, it's more labor, but if you know Mr. T, he had a mohawk, right? When you attach the rumps of a coyote together to make a full strip, guess what happens? You got a mohawk in the center of your coat. Okay, so what happens if you attach the neck side, right? Well, then you've got a valley right in the center of the most important part of your strip. You've got a mohawk right in the center. Or you could take it, cut it the other way, and reattach it, but that looks kind of weird when you have this, you know, pattern like this going across your trim. So there's all kinds of problems when you have one of those half coyotes. They were worthless last year. They're certainly going to be worthless like this year. If you catch one that's got the rubbed out neck, they're pretty easy to identify. And if you do bring one in the truck, you know, typically I spend some time. That's my busiest stop I have probably, so maybe I don't, but you know, ask me and I'll show you, you know, what the problem is. But if that coyote is missing in the neck, don't bring it in. Okay? Any other questions on coyotes?
Is anybody gonna step up, like, take over that market? Throw it out the window?
Okay, that's a really good question. Tons of people ask me that. Is anybody going to step up and you know, take over the Canada Goose market? Well, Moose Knuckle was one that could have, and they just decided not to use fur either. Montclair is, you know, still using fur, you know, thank goodness, which is a competitor to Canada Goose. You know, I hope so. Are they going to start with Eastern Coyotes? I doubt it. But, you know, like I said, the fur trade in general, you know, besides, you know, Canada Goose, besides Montclair, has basically just discarded, you know, North America, Europe, and, you know, the rest of the world besides China, which is unfortunate. So, you know, I'd love to see it, but, you know, is somebody going to step up for, you know, the people that use muskrats in Europe, you know, 10 years ago, you know, and so far nobody has. Is somebody going to step up, you know, for the people that trimmed in Europe, or the people that make coats in Europe, you know, for the Russians? Now, nobody has yet. So I certainly hope so. It's a neat looking coat. We were shocked when we heard that they were going to quit, because it was sort of the, you know, the trademark of their company, if you will. And, you know, it certainly helped to sell the rest of their stuff. You know, they're a different company without that coat. You know, that was them, and they sold a lot of other stuff because of it. And they're going to be competing with a lot of different people that, you know, they probably didn't compete with before on equal footing, because, you know, they don't have that. It's not going to be easy. So I'm sure they didn't take the decision lightly. But yeah, we hope so. We hope, you know, that somebody would step up. And, you know, they said the CEO had people protesting outside his house, and he just had it. And so he quit. So, but the outcome is, you know, they're destroying our culture. You know, we have a few people that make a protest about that, and they destroy us as a culture. You know, we are a culture. You know, maybe you like us, maybe you don't, but, you know, there's a lot of cultures in this country, and, you know, they protest being destroyed or whatever, and, you know, this is really cultural genocide is what it is. And, you know, you can call it anything you want, but they would like to see us gone. And, you know, history doesn't look, you know, too kindly on people that, you know, try to destroy, you know, another person's culture, but, you know, that's another story. All right, any other questions on coyotes?
Yeah, can I make a statement on the
Sure.
coyote deal? I run dogs, yeah, and I run curs, and they stay with me, and they mind. They never get out of my, you know, my area, my hearing. I need you guys to get rid of the coyotes, because they come and attack the dogs on the tree all the time.
Yeah, you know,
Believe it or not.
this guy's.
They're gonna get into the cities, they're gonna get into all the towns.
Okay, this is a guy saying that coyotes are, you know, getting his dogs. Well, they're going to get into the cities. Let me tell you, that's another. They're already. Who said that?
They're already there.
They're already there. I mean, I have friends that live on the outskirts of Chicago. One in a little suburb. You know, he said in his little enclave, he said, you know, 6 dogs last year and 5 cats. The coyotes got. You know, this as a fur trade, this is what we want to tell the world. You know, we're going to save your pets. You know, or you're going to just lose your pets. You're going to lose your pets. You're going to lose your kids. You know, these are the things we have to say. This, you know, the world believes in emotion today. You know, and the fur trade has tried to use science and reason, you know, for the past 50 years. And you see where science and reason has gotten us. Science and reason has gotten us nowhere, and emotion will get us everywhere. And you know, I'm an emotional guy. I actually am. I really get excited about a lot of things. And you know, this is how my generation is. You know, we just, you know, that's all we care about is emotion. And that if we want any salvation in the fur trade, that's what we have to become. And that's what we're trying to do with Wild Fur Forever. We're not going after trappers to try to support us. You guys already support us. You support the fur trade. We're going after pet owners. We're going after environmentalists. We're going after turkey hunters. We're going after deer hunters. You know, these are the people that a vibrant and higher wild fur market actually protects. We protect pets if we have a high fur market. You know, we protect turkeys if we have a high wild fur market. We protect the environment. We protect water. Who said waterfowl? We protect waterfowl. I mean, you know, how many millions and millions of dollars are in the waterfowl industry that, you know, they should be supporting us. You know, and that's what we're looking for. Because this is what a deterioration in the wild fur market means, that there are going to be more predators, you know, for everything. I mean, you trap a beaver, you know, you help save a tree. You know, what better environmental story do you have? You know, that's carbon sequestration at its finest, folks. You know, we're the biggest environmentalists there are. You know, we were the original environmentalists, and we've turned into a bunch of people that want to talk to the world about facts when they don't care about facts. And you know, this is how I see the only way the future of the fur business. And I think if we can last, I do think that there is hope for us, because I just can't believe that the next generation after me walks into a store and purchases a polyester garment and can feel good about it. You know, as environmentally conscious as they are, it's really surprising that person, and they do it every day. I mean, you go into a store and obviously that's all you see coming out is, you know, polyester, you know, garments. And it's a super environmentally friendly. It's horrible for the environment, right? Never goes away, you know, it reduces microplastics, you know, all of that stuff. You know, we just have to, you know, get that message out there. So, are there any other questions? Or I'll move on. How are we doing for time?
Good.
Good. Okay. Oh, we got a question here.
Round the green to put up, what's your market?
What's that?
Round the green to put up.
Okay, so round is green to put up. There's no question on round, because we are not buying anything to carcass in Wisconsin next year. Nothing, including coyotes. You gotta have it skinned. That's how it is. Coyote market last year, you know, there's a big enough margin that we can afford to skin it, we can afford to truck it. That's not there this year. So everything will have to be skinned this year, so that's not a question. Green to dry, it obviously depends on the situation. Muskrats have got to be dry, so that's not a question. Really, I mean, a wild mink has got to be put up today. A red fox has got to be put up. Those are all super easy, couple-minute jobs for a trapper, okay? If you're spending more than a couple minutes on a muskrat putting it up, you spend too long. Call me up personally. My name is Guy GROENEWOLD. I'll go over with you how to put up a muskrat and keep it under 2 minutes, okay? And that's, I guess there's no question about how the difference on those, because they got to be dry. Now, a raccoon green to dry and a beaver green to dry, those are the two primary things, maybe an otter that we're talking about. An otter is probably $5, okay? That's a very difficult item for you to put up, and it's a very difficult item for us to put up too, but so that a trapper can trap it and still sell it, because it's hard for a novice to do. We give you $5 extra if you'll put it up, so we still buy it in grease. Raccoon and beaver, we do not pay enough to get you to scrape and dry them, okay? And that's because basically because we try to keep the green price as high as we can, so that, because they're both hard items to trap, so we try to keep someone trapping, okay? Because if we didn't buy green coon, we didn't buy green beaver, it would be almost impossible for a lot of people to sell their fur. So we have machinery that scrapes both of them, and we try to provide as high a price as we can, but it's not going to cover, you know, your cost. I mean, I had a really good beaver guy in my booth. He told me it takes him 45 minutes to put up a beaver, and you know, it's a couple bucks extra to dry it, so it's not worth it. So I guess, you know, sell your freezer beaver and freeze your raccoon. That's
So you never actually measure or grade beaver by inches anymore. You just basically
with prices are so cheap on beaver right now, and you know, we had a good year selling beaver, and we started off, I'll just tell you the numbers, we started off with 80,000 beavers a year ago. So our year end is in 2 weeks. We started off with 80,000 beavers, okay? We want to get our inventory down. I mean, that's a lot of beavers to freeze, it's a lot of beavers to keep. Okay, so we actually felt, you know, like, let's not be too aggressive on price, because what else can you do to keep your volumes from growing, okay? So we thought we weren't very aggressive on price. We sold 40-some thousand beavers this year, which is not a bad year for us. I would have liked to have sold more, but we sold 40-some thousand. It was a year of COVID. And China doesn't take too many beavers. That was a pretty good year. How many beavers do you think we have right now in inventory? Who said that? What?
50,000.
50? You got a guy that said 100,000, he is the lucky winner. We have 100,000 beavers. You know, we sold 40, but we bought 60 back. And, you know, Castor Market, you know, people still just got trapping beavers. So the price is low. It's difficult in a timely fashion to, you know, to go through all those beavers. But I can just tell you that if I start, you know, I know what I'm doing. You know, I usually do 2 piles, and they have the big ones there, or they don't get made in the big pile. So, I mean, it's mostly, almost everything is used for hatters today. So you're basically buying the green by weight. That's the
I
bottom
mean,
line.
it used to be there was such a good range of price. It was
Sure,
zero-
that you-
It was $0 to $60.
When there was a, you know, even in the grease, you know, you'd be $35 top, you know, you couldn't have 2 prices, you know, you had to have, you know, a lot of times we'd have 7 prices, at least always 6, you know, and you'd grade them all the way down. You can't, when it's, you know, 5 and 1 or whatever, I mean, you just can't do that. So,
Are you buying Castor at the truck?
we are buying Castor, yeah.
And what
Castor Market should be pretty good this year.
do you want us to do with that? What-
You can go on our website and look, we have some stuff. You know, when you pull it out, you know, make sure it doesn't have a lot of fat on it, a lot of meat or anything like that. Hang it up for 3 days, then put it in the freezer. And a lot of it depends on how dry they are. You know, some guy that's hanging it in his skinning shed that brings, you know, wet coon in there every day, you know, it's really not the place to do it. It's gotta be kind of a dry area, and pull them out of the freezer and dry them again before you send them to us. I mean, you'll get to where you know what the feel is. There's not water coming out, they don't feel wet.
Wouldn't that be too dry?
They can't, oh, absolutely. You know, you have guys all the time say, yeah, I forgot these last year, I had them laying out in the shed, and they bring them in and they're, you know, there's nothing left to them, and, you know, yeah, they're just shells and, you know, whatever. And they don't weigh anything either, so, you know, they're still worth something, but you don't get much because they weigh nothing. So, any other questions on Castor, beaver? All right, I've kind of, wild mink, they'll follow, you know, muskrats and ranch mink. I've got a bunch of wild mink in China right now, you know, but I'll sell them before the season. But, you know, they're an item that, you know, has, you know, really certainly tripled since they're low. I mean, you know, if you look at them, you know, a year and 4 months ago, you know, they were an item that was certainly unsaleable. I mean, you know, we were buying trouble mink for, you know, next to nothing. And, you know, so I mean, everything has improved somewhat. And there is certainly room for more improvement, but the thing we're facing is, you know, we have one market, which is China. That's a bad thing, and at least we have them. Yeah, we'll see what happens. All right. Any other items? Red fox, you know, is kind of like coon. It's also used for liners and trims, and you know, used in carcass. And you know, it was a better item last year than the year before, and you know, the price kind of reflected that. I mean, that was another item that was just about unsaleable. You know, even before the COVID thing, it was a very, very difficult item to move. Part of that reason is, contrary to what most people think, there just isn't enough of them. And you know, in China, you know, people they don't want an item where there isn't anything. You know, gray fox, that's a difficult item because you know they just don't think they can get enough. If they put it on a coat and it works, you know, they want to be able to get more. And so having nothing, I tell these trapper groups when I talk to them, I say, you know, if you think that less fur is going to make higher prices, you know, 10 years ago there was probably, and I know I've said these statistics before, but there was somewhere around 2.2, 2.5 million raccoon harvested in the United States, you know, 10 years ago. And, you know, look what the price was, you know, it was $25 or something. And, you know, now last year I'd say there was 250,000, so right around 10% of what there was 10 or 12 years ago. And the price is 10% of what it was, you know, 10 years ago. And there's 10% of the fur. That's just amazing. It doesn't work. I mean, in the fur market, that's just not how it works. I mean, basically, most things, besides some specialty items like the Western coyote, which was outside of the realm of sort of the Chinese market, and cats, and really good cats, but commercial cats is not the case. It's like raccoon, muskrats, you know, beaver, mink. It's all based on the ranch mink price. And you're just not, if you see the ranch mink price, you know, floating lower, it's going to go lower. If you see the ranch mink price going up, you know, and if they have a good selling season in China, the ranch mink, you know, it will get stronger. You know, I'm convinced there's no mink in Denmark now, and you know, if we have gangbusters year, even a year similar to last year in China, which was, you know, pretty decent. They had a little COVID right towards the end of the year, especially in Hebei, which is by Beijing, which is kind of the wild fur area, which kind of hurt us. But other than that, we had a fairly, you know, successful season. And actually, November, December, January were really good months for us selling in China. So, you know, it could even be that we start buying and things could get better even from there, if, you know, because that's really our primary selling time. But hopefully, in the next, you know, couple of weeks, it starts to open up a little bit. We get kind of an idea.
Do you sell any of your fur through fur harvesters, or does all your fur go direct?
All of our
You're
fur,
not,
all
you're
of our
not
fur.
like
We buy a lot there, but, you know.
or you buy it from
Yeah,
harvesters,
yeah,
or
we
you
do
don't
some of that.
sell?
Yeah, we don't sell anything there, no. No. We sell everything basically besides the muskrats is sent to Cambodia and then goes to China for the rest. And then we have shops in China where we have people that sell our stuff every single day. I get a WeChat every single morning at 6 o'clock that says this is what we sold these items. So I mean and that's why, you know, I mean I could wake up one day buying and you know, and you may say the next day you sold to me and your friend sold to me the day before, and wow, you know, you got another $1 for your rats or whatever. Well, that could be because I sold some rats the night before, I sold some coon or, you know, whatever.
So I should ask you how many you sold before I get
You should ask me how many you sold. And I might tell you the truth, and I might not either.
How long have you been selling in Cambodia?
We don't sell anything, we just dress it there.
You dress it.
We just can it there, yeah. About 10 years ago, China and the Eastern Asian countries, they got together with a pact, and they had a lower importation tax going in from Cambodia. So your stuff gets taxed at a lower rate going in from Cambodia. And part of the reason for that is they didn't want to have all the pollution in China, and so they did that. So those places were already in place. Thank goodness. I absolutely do not know what we would do because there's no dressing capacity anywhere else in the world. But those plants were put together, you know, several years ago, and mostly did ranch mink, and all the wild fur was done in China. But now we've, you know, had to switch and do everything in Cambodia.
When Denmark made them felt off all their mink, with the cost of fur to put on the market.
Okay, so wild were destroyed and just buried. Some of them that they didn't have COVID on their ranch, they could still market them, and they were killed about 2 weeks early. So they weren't great, but they were still marketable. Most of them have been sold. No, it didn't, absolutely not, because they had all those mink that didn't, you know, that didn't see the market, that got destroyed. So it certainly helped the market, but Denmark is still open as an auction, even though they're quitting. So they have like 3 auctions left. They have one going on in a week, and they had enough skins that people had in storage there that they still can sell because they probably had 10 million skins in storage. So, and they had a few of those skins that were pelted out. They sold this year, and they'll be selling off that stock that people had stored there, you know, throughout the next year. But then that's it. Copenhagen is done. So that will help us some, you know. All right, I kind of covered, you know, most items. Any other items I didn't cover, or any other questions?
Did Eric the ears that cut off the tire?
You can cut the ears off the coyotes. I really don't care. No. We'd rather them cut off than be smelling. So, yeah, you know, whatever's easiest. We like it to be as easy as possible. You know, we realize, you know, we want the fun. You know, we want the trapping to be fun and not just some, you know, laborious task for it. Go ahead.
Now, your coon fleshing down at the plant down there, how many coons you flesh per hour?
Oh, I don't know, probably 200 or so.
Is that one guy doing that?
One guy, yeah.
But they look that many hours. But is that something that you could see sometime if you were down there?
You know, it's pretty well proprietary. I can show you, but then I'd have to tell you. I'll take you out to lunch, okay? Go ahead.
With that wild fur forever, have you
Yep.
guys seen like an increase in outsiders crossing over to?
I'll tell you, that's a really good question. He's talking about Wild Fur Forever, and we are going to start that as a nonprofit, and a nonprofit takes several months to get started. And so we're really taking it slow until we're a nonprofit, and then we will really try to do that. Whether it will be successful, you know, nobody knows. Are these other people ready to support us? You know, I would say, you know, I hope so. Because, you know, as much as we talk about emotion, you know, there is a lot of truth there. And, you know, we do control the population of wildlife that, in a society, or in an environment that we live in. And it is important, you know, it is important, you know, to control the beaver population. It is important to control, you know, the coyote population. It's important to control, you know, the raccoon population. I mean, you know, even birders, you know what a birder is, the person that watches birds, right? You know, I mean, certainly, you know, millions of birds are, you know, eggs are killed by, you know, raccoons and opossums every year. And, you know, we're part of the solution for that, you know. You know, certainly everybody remembers, you know, when we had a super vibrant raccoon price, you know, you saw pigeons around, you know, in barns and whatever, you know, and then, you know, when the price of coon goes down, there's lots of raccoon around, the pigeons go down because the raccoon go into the barn and they eat all the eggs, you know. So there is definitely a cause and effect, and you know, we're not saying there's not science that proves all that stuff. We're just saying that there's an emotional story there that, you know, hey, you know, that feed them will kill the people. Okay. So yeah, that's a great question. If you want to help us, you know, any suggestions you have, we'd be willing to listen to. We've actually done some focus groups, had people in, had turkey hunters in, talked to them. You know, what do you think about this? We've had, you know, birders in. We've had, you know, different groups just to see, you know, what they thought about, you know, our story. But that's the future of the fur trade, I think. You know. So.
How do you look at the front legs of the tires?
Just, you know, as short as you want.
Up above the elbow?
Sure, yeah. Yep. Above the elbow, where you cut a coyote's front arm off.
The guy?
Yep.
You know, we always looked at the animal rights as there's a lot of affluence that we have to fight. What I hear you saying, I never realized that discrepancy between environmental and anti. There's an awful lot of affluence in that environmental group as well. Is this wild, what you're developing here? Are you trying to, what are some ways that you think we can tap into that well?
Okay, so I think there's a lot of, okay, yeah, that's a good point. So he's a little bit trying to help him differentiate, you know, between environmental and animal rights, and, you know, how can we tap into that environmental wealth? They do it on the animal rights side, you know, $10, $20 at a time. And